Alright, so today, another orchestra piece. This is Echoes of Time in the River by George Crumb. See if I can get a recording. Yeah, this one is no problem. George Crumb is a very famous composer, and this is from the 1960s, sort of like peak of his career, 1965. And actually, I found this score myself. Nobody gave it to me. There was this website, I think it was called like Free Piano Sheet Music. I downloaded a ton of Crumb from it. And it wasn't just solo piano pieces. I found all kinds of stuff like this. So yeah, it's 4 processionals, I guess. Frozen Time, Remembrance of Time, Collapse of Time, Last Echoes of Time. Interesting. We even get a little bio, so I don't have to pull up Wikipedia. So, George Crumb, born in Charleston, West Virginia in 1929. At the time of composing this, he was living in Pennsylvania. And I guess his father was a music professor at Mason College, where he first studied. Then University of Illinois, University of Michigan, Berkshire Music Center, Hochschule für Musik in Berlin. So this is sort of the trajectory of his education. Some of his teachers include Rossley Finney, Boris Blacker, and he taught at University of Colorado, Hollins College, Interlochen, and received numerous awards. The big ones were the Guggenheim, and yeah, that's while he was faculty at University of Pennsylvania. So yeah, that was the biggest award he had won at the time of composing this piece, at least. And then this piece was commissioned by the University of Chicago and was first performed on campus by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. The idea of an American composer separate from a European tradition is starting to emerge, I think, with Crumb's career. And he passed away very recently. I think he's most famous for his work in the 60s and 70s. And one really good thing about Crumb is his music is very accessible and like to the general public. He often like quotes like other pieces of classical music or tonal music. He thinks a lot about metaphor and music as metaphor. And in this piece, I think the River of Time is the metaphor he's playing with. It says so in the program note here. It's a continuum without beginning or end. He structured a number of processionals into the score. There's also phrases which are whispered or shouted by orchestra players. And there's an element of nostalgia, quoting the spiritual, "Were you there when they crucified my Lord?" at the conclusion of the second movement. Here's the setup. So this is far from our ordinary orchestra setup. We got strings in the middle here. And then we got percussionists all over the place. So percussion 1 is from the conductor's point of view in the far right corner. Percussion 2 is situated in this group with mandolin, harp, celesta, and piano on the conductor's right. Percussion 3 is on the conductor's left with another piano. Then percussions 4, 5, and 6 are all up in the left-hand corner. And I'm assuming, based on the program note, that these percussionists are going to be moving around. So let's see how that happens in action here. So in movement 2, we got all of our winds on the right. Obviously the pianos aren't moving around, but the mandolin starts on stage and moves off stage to the left. And then percussions 4, 5, and 6 start off stage, but they proceed in front of the stage basically and come up the left-hand side to their position here. This is like the general, like this is where their chairs would be basically. Yeah, then in movement 2 we have a whole bunch of other wind players that are not here, right? Moving from off stage down the center of the aisles basically. So all the brass end up in front here, and then the flutes end up on the right by the piano, and the clarinets end up on the left by the other piano. It's a little bit unclear to me, I'm just going to be honest, how you get from the end of movement 1 to the start of movement 2. Like, you have horn 1 on stage right, and then somehow it ends up in front. I guess it would have to come down the right-hand side of the stage, but... then, of course, movement 3, we have all these winds by the pianos. 6 of them, 3 clarinets, 3 flutes. They move off stage. But the brass, which were in the front, if we recall, right, behind the conductor, they have to come up down the middle aisles. So that's the third processional. And then the fourth one, we got everybody leaving, basically. So the brass are actually crisscrossing around one another, along with any percussionists that are on stage there, like percussion 3. So they're heading off stage, but not in the same direction. They're crossing in front of one another. And then the 3, like percussions 4 through 6, are moving back to their original positions, down stage left, you could say. At some point, flutes 1, 3, and clarinet 1 have to be moved on stage for movement 4. Right, so they move off stage in movement 3, and somehow they have to come back up here, playing antique cymbals, and throughout movement 4 they move off stage. But it's a very small movement, it looks like. There's all kinds of logistical things that have to be taken into account, and I think Crumb does a good job of listing all the things that need to happen. Like, for example, certain players have to memorize their parts. Some players have to read along. The wind players have to carry around these antique cymbals, and I believe the flutes also have to carry around piccolos. Right, so auxiliary things have to be on the player's person. I think logistically it kind of makes sense. What's also interesting about the layout of this score, I think, is it's sort of like lays out its priorities. It's like, here's a program, right? This is like what the piece is about. And the piece is about processionals. It's about moving. Here's how the processionals happen. Then we get into the instrumentation, right? So for a conductor who's trying to program something, it's nice and inviting. It's like, hey, if you can't do this stuff, don't even program it. The instrumentation, however, is it looks like 3300. Yeah, and then 3330, and then we have harp and mandolin. The mandolin player is like freely moving, and then 2 pianos and strings, and then the percussion is like listed separately here because it's kind of huge. We got 2 timpani. It looks like they're kind of larger in size. The timpanist also has to play tam-tam and glockenspiel, which is a little bit unusual. You'd have to give him him or her 2 paychecks. And it looks like they also have a bunch of other small percussion, like their own antique cymbals, suspended cymbal, bamboo chimes, Chinese temple gong. The main instrument for percussion 2 is the vibraphone, which I guess would have to be on stage near that piano. Tam-tam, antique cymbals, suspended cymbal, glockenspiel, but just like the notes, like a couple keys of it, I guess. that's listed here somewhere, and 2 congas, glass chimes. 3 has to manage dunking this tam-tam in a tub of water. Obviously, it'd be a very small one. And they have 5 antique cymbals, large suspended cymbal, their own glockenspiel bars, bongo drums, cowbells, tubular bells. It looks like 3 temple bells on E sharp, F sharp, G sharp. 4 antique cymbals, suspended cymbal, finger cymbals, glass chimes, glockenspiel plates, sleigh bells, and then like a large bell of some kind. And then percussion 5, 2 antique cymbals, xylophone, glockenspiel plates, timbales that have to be carried around, medium suspended cymbal, glass chimes, which is misspelled class chimes, bass drum, percussion. Okay, yeah, interesting. So 5 has the bass drum, which has to be on stage, I'm assuming. And then 6 has their own antique cymbals, tam-tam, 2 glockenspiel plates, large suspended cymbal, marimba, glass chimes. 6, the marimba is the big odd one. Lots of metals, like lots of pitched and unpitched metals, which is kind of interesting. And on top of all that percussion, we got a lot of other processional people like winds and brass playing their own cymbals. 2 antique cymbals for flute 1 and flute 3. All 3 flutes have to double on piccolo. Clarinet 2 has their own antique cymbals. Trumpet 1 has antique cymbals and finger cymbals. Trumpet 2 just has finger cymbals. Horn 1 has antique cymbals. Horn 3 has antique cymbals as well. And third trombone doubles on bass. Piano 1 has a pair of finger cymbals, a small tambourine, which they will play with a mallet. And piano 2 has access to a celesta, which would have to be situated on stage. They should also have their own tambourine played with a mallet. Concertmaster has 2 antique cymbals. The middle desk violinist, I guess, would that be the assistant concertmaster? So the main second violinist, two of their own antique cymbals. And then viola, the main violist, has 2 of their own antique cymbals as well. I think the way that he's listing the inventory here is you would need 6 antique cymbals on the low C sharp, 3 on the A4, etc. And then for the glockenspiel plates, you would need like 3 on the A flat, 5 on the E flat. So you would have to source these glockenspiel bars from like multiple instruments. So it's quite an expensive affair just like amassing all this stuff. Crumb's famous for these cutaway scores that he very beautifully engraves by hand. They're a little bit cumbersome to read, but they're just very beautiful things, you know. If we look at the first stanza, you can kind of see we're at 8th equals 70. So each measure is huge. It's very slow. We got the 3 percussionists, like 1 through 3, playing these different pitched and unpitched metals that are let to vibrate. And some of them are at very loud dynamics, some are very quiet. And then off stage, we have the trombones, who are just doing these slow little glissandi things and trying to coordinate their entrances with one another. But it's all very loose, right? They have tons of time to sort of do this thing. And the conductor is conducting in 7 very slowly to try and coordinate all this. And yeah, then we get at the end of this line the entrance of percussions 4, 5, and 6. And they should be walking in this rhythm. Because if we look back at the plan here, 4, 5, and 6 are walking. They gotta get all the way around the stage over here. So percussions 1, 2, and 3 are kind of like in this area. And the trombones, I guess it's not specified here, but they're off stage. They only get on stage in movement 2. That's a little bit of an introduction to what this score will look like. Hopefully I haven't rambled on too much. The link to this recording is in the video description. This will be the Louisville Orchestra performing it. This predates Crumb's Pulitzer Prize in 1968, which is kind of interesting. That's when his career really took off. So, sounds like he was already getting some pretty sizable commissions before then, and was already, well established in his career. So, okay, yeah. So my thoughts on this thing. I think it's a great representation of Crumb's work and what he does, and I think it's kind of funny that I'm just listening to it for the first time now, because sort of the go-to examples of Crumb's music are Macrocosmos, which is a cycle of chamber works, and also his string quartet. But very rarely have I looked at his orchestral works, and I feel like this is really makes a full use of like his theatrical inclinations. Like, this is really what he would make, and it really kind of encapsulates that. It's like one of the most theatrical, elaborate, sound-based kind of pieces that I've heard, and the score is a very beautiful representation of Crumb's like logistical mind for this stuff. Every sound that I was like listing in the instrumentation, which I was like skeptical of, was used very liberally and had a very special moment in the piece. Like the sleigh bells were really important, as was the tam-tam being submerged in water. Like, those two sounds were actually more like sustained pads that held together large sections of music. The chanting ended up being a huge part of the piece, and even the strings got some use, although it was more of a like very percussion heavy kind of piece. I think the pacing and the use of time and space is obviously the central point of this piece, and Crumb is very cognizant of how much time one can get away with. There's like these long silences and meditative aspects of the piece without it sort of losing its narrative flow. You still get like one thing happening after another. The circular music stuff in movements 2 and 3 was really interesting. We first get it with the clarinets here playing into the piano. So yeah, this sudden high frantic clarinet playing after some very slow and meditative, eerie stuff is really effective, and I think was a real highlight of the piece for me. Then it happens again, but with the piccolos. So you get this sort of like symmetrical, like ceremonious thing where you see the two groups enter the stage. One of them plays, then the other plays, and there's something very direct and satisfying about it. Because it's so focused on procession and spatializing, there's this whole metaphor behind the piece. I think this is probably the most successful use of spatialization in an orchestra piece that we've seen so far. going through all these scores. It doesn't feel contrived, or it doesn't feel like underutilized. It's the point of the piece. Next on the docket here will be, let's see, Arvo Pärt's Credo, which is a orchestra piece from before his minimalist period. So, but towards the end of his serial period, I believe. So that'll be interesting, and it won't be our first Pärt piece, but it'll be a nice complement to what we've looked at before, which was Fratres.